Let me tell you something that nobody in a suit sitting behind a mahogany desk at your local bank branch is ever going to admit to your face. Saving money in a bank account is one of the most financially destructive habits you can have. Not because you're spending, not because you're reckless, but because you're being disciplined, responsible, and patient, and the system is quietly punishing you for it every single day. While you sleep, while you work, while you tell yourself you're doing the right thing. The bank is winning, and you're losing ground. I built companies from nothing. I've sat across from some of the sharpest investors on the planet. I've made money, lost money, and made it back again. And the one truth that separates people who actually build wealth from people who just talk about it, it's not income, it's not luck. It's understanding where your money goes when you're not looking at it. So here's what I want to ask you right now, and I genuinely want you to answer this in the comments below. How much money do you currently have sitting in a savings account? And do you actually know what it's earning you every year? Be honest. Because most people have no idea, and that ignorance, that's the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Here's the math that banks pray you never do. The average savings account in the United States is paying somewhere between 0.01% and 0.5% annually. Meanwhile, inflation, the silent tax that nobody voted for, is running at a rate that historically sits between 3% and 4% over the long term, and in recent years has been significantly higher. That means if you have $50,000 in a savings account, you're not preserving wealth, you're watching it evaporate, slowly, painlessly, until one day you realize your $50,000 buys what $38,000 used to. You didn't spend a dime, but you lost $12,000. That's not safety. That's a slow bleed. The bank isn't your partner. Let me be very direct about that. Banks take your deposits and deploy that capital into mortgages, business loans, and investment instruments that generate returns of 6%, 8%, 10%, or more. Then they hand you back a fraction of a percent and call it a savings account. They've built an entire branding campaign around the idea that saving equals safety. But safety for whom? Not for you, for them. You are the product. Your money is the inventory. And every month you leave it there, you're donating the spread to a shareholder you'll never meet. I'm not saying banks have no utility. They do. You need liquidity. You need somewhere to park cash you'll need in the next 90 days. Emergency funds, operating capital, near-term expenses. Yes, keep that accessible. But anything beyond 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting in a low-yield savings account is dead capital. And dead capital is a choice, your choice. Now let me talk about what I actually do. What people who understand money actually do. The first principle is this: every dollar you own needs a job. Not some dollars. Every dollar. When money sits idle, it's not resting, it's deteriorating. The moment I earn income, I'm thinking about deployment. Where does this go? What does it produce? What's the return on this capital over 12, 24, 36 months? That's not obsessive. That's ownership mentality. And most people never develop it because they were taught that saving is the goal. It's not. Saving is the starting line. Investing is the race. The second principle, you need to understand the difference between assets and storage. A savings account is storage. Real estate, dividend-paying equities, private businesses, royalty streams, index funds, those are assets. Assets work. Storage just sits there. The wealthy don't store money, they deploy it. That's the fundamental behavioral difference between someone worth $50,000 and someone worth $5 million. It's not that the wealthy person earned 100 times more. It's that they put every dollar to work 100 times smarter. I personally allocate capital across several categories. Dividend-producing equities are a cornerstone. I want companies that have been paying dividends consistently for years. Businesses with real cash flow, not speculative bets. When a company pays me a dividend every quarter, my money is producing income while I sleep. That's the goal. Passive income isn't a buzzword, it's the mechanism of freedom. Real estate structured correctly is another pillar. Not flipping houses, not speculative development plays. I'm talking about income-generating properties where the rent covers the mortgage, the taxes, the maintenance, and then produces surplus. Cash flow positive real estate is one of the most powerful wealth vehicles in history because it combines income generation with appreciation potential and significant tax advantages. The IRS actually rewards real estate investors. That's not an accident. That's a policy choice. Use it. Let me challenge a belief that I know a significant portion of you are holding right now. You're thinking, Kevin, I don't have enough money to invest. Once I save more, then I'll start. That thinking is a trap. And it's a trap the financial industry accidentally set for you because they taught you sequentially, first save, then invest. But that's not how compounding works. Compounding is time sensitive. The math on this is brutal and beautiful simultaneously. A dollar invested at 8% annually becomes $2.16 in 10 years. The same dollar left in a savings account at 0.5% becomes 1.05%, becomes $1.05. After 30 years, the invested dollar is worth $10.06. The saved dollar is worth $1.16. That gap widens every single year you wait. Every single year. There is no right time to start. There is only now and later always costs you more. The psychological reason people don't invest isn't really about money. It's about control and fear. A savings account feels controllable. You can see the number. It doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't go down. That stability is emotionally comforting, even when it's financially catastrophic. Markets go up and down. Businesses fail. Real estate hits rough patches. That volatility feels like risk. But here's what I've learned across decades of investing. The biggest risk isn't volatility. It's permanent loss of purchasing power. And that's exactly what a savings account guarantees you, quietly, without drama, without headlines. Let me talk about the mindset shift, because tactics without mindset don't stick. Most people think about money as a resource to protect. I think about money as a tool to deploy. That single reframe changes every financial decision you make. When money is something to protect, you hoard it. You hide it. You measure success by how much you've accumulated in storage. When money is a tool, you measure success by what it's producing. Return on capital becomes your scorecard, not account balance. Average people celebrate having a big number in their savings account. Wealthy people celebrate cash flow, income that arrives without requiring their active labor. That's the target, not the pile. The river. A pile depletes. A river replenishes. Here's something else I want you to understand about the wealthy that rarely gets discussed honestly. They don't become wealthy and then invest. They invest, and that's what makes them wealthy. The sequence matters enormously. Most financial advice tells you to earn, save, then invest. The actual path is earn, invest, reinvest the returns, and let compounding do the rest. Saving is a bottleneck in that equation, not a strategy. Now, I want to be responsible here because some people are going to hear this and go make reckless decisions. So let me be very clear about the framework. You need liquidity. 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a high-yield savings account. And I mean a genuine high-yield account, not a legacy bank standard savings product. Right now, there are FDIC-insured high-yield savings accounts and money market accounts paying 4% annually. If you're not in one of those, you're leaving money on the table even within the category of safe cash. That's table stakes. Do that today. Beyond your emergency fund, think in time horizons. Money you won't need for 1 to 3 years can go into short-term bonds, treasury instruments, or CDs with competitive rates. Money you won't need for 5 or more years belongs in the market. Index funds, dividend stocks, REITs, diversified equity exposure over long time horizons has historically returned 7% to 10% annually. That's not a promise. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. But the historical record is hard to argue with. The specific investments matter less than the behavior. The discipline of investing consistently, of not panic selling when markets correct, of reinvesting dividends, of adding to positions over time. That's what builds wealth. Not finding the perfect stock, not timing the market, behavior, consistency, time. I want to speak directly to the younger people watching this, because if you're in your 20s or 30s, you have something that no amount of money can buy back later. Time. You have decades of compounding available to you. Decades. And if you spend those decades in a savings account waiting until you feel ready or safe or knowledgeable enough, you will arrive at 50 having given away the most valuable financial asset you ever had. I didn't always know what I was doing when I started investing. Nobody does. You learn by doing. You learn by making small mistakes with small amounts, by reading, by paying attention, by staying in the game long enough to let the compounding mathematics work in your favor. The market will educate you, but only if you participate. Stop waiting for certainty. Certainty is the luxury of hindsight. Every investor who made money did so without certainty. They make calculated bets with incomplete information. That's all investing is. Informed decision-making under uncertainty. And you can learn that skill. It's not reserved for people born into money or people with finance degrees. It's available to anyone willing to think differently about what money is and what it's supposed to do. The bank is not your enemy, but it's not your ally either. It's a business. And like any business, it serves its own interests first. When you leave $100,000 in a savings account, the bank generates thousands of dollars per year deploying that capital. They give you $50. The math is right there. The question is whether you're going to keep accepting that arrangement. I stopped accepting it a long time ago. The moment I understood that my money was someone else's working capital, that the bank was essentially borrowing from me at near zero interest to lend to others at significant rates, everything changed. I stopped thinking like a saver and started thinking like an investor. That shift didn't require more money. It required a different relationship with the money I already had. And that's what I want for you. Not a specific stock tip, not a formula. A different relationship with capital. One where you understand its purpose, its potential, and the real cost of leaving it idle. Every single day that passes with your money in a low-yield account is a day of compounding you cannot recover. Time is non-refundable. The returns you didn't earn in 2020, 21, 2022, those are gone. But today you still have today. And tomorrow, you'll have tomorrow. The question is what you do with them. Stop saving in banks like it's a strategy. It's not a strategy. It's a habit. And habits can be changed. Start treating every dollar you own as a decision, not a deposit. Ask what it's producing. Ask what it could produce. Ask what you're giving up by leaving it where it is. That's the real conversation. Not about which bank has the prettiest app or the best sign-up bonus. About whether your money is working as hard as you are. Because if it's not, if your capital isn't generating return while you sleep, while you eat, while you live your life, then you are the only one in this relationship doing any work. That's not wealth. That's labor with extra steps, and you deserve better than that.